something I did notice about what you're talking about, you did not live or at least outwardly show a sense of shame. You know, you were very good, I would say, about either holding that in, but, you know, you, as an outward front, you were pretty good about, you know, saying, this is the life I'm going to live. I'm proud of what I did. I'm proud of the voice I have right now. And I don't think that you walked around with any sense of shame for right or wrong in some people's mind. Some people may have seen that as egotistical, and some people may have said, well, maybe he's telling the truth and he's not really guilty. So, looking back, do you think you would still do the same kind of media blitz? And do you think the court of public opinion is that important nowadays?
Well, as I said, I didn't do it for the court of public opinion. I did it because I had this personal need just to tell the world I didn't do it.
I know.
The answer is yes, I would, of course, yes, I would do it again.
Okay.
And I asked myself that moments after the judge gave me 14 years. You know, because he said I treated it like a duel and like a boxing match. And he was right, and I did. And I asked myself, and this is the hard part of it, because you have two little girls, and you say to yourself, are you putting your pride above them?
Yeah.
Because this is now, it isn't just you going away. When you leave, you're leaving your little girls essentially without a father.
Right, it's affecting.
For potentially 14 years or 12 years had I had good behavior, which I had good behavior. But so your pride was more important to you than actually cutting your losses and just letting these guys kick your ass and stomp all over you, which is in the minds of a lot of people, like probably Jen Alison and these others and their families who decide to just surrender. But again, as I said before, I was the governor, and I had this higher duty because I chose to be a leader, right?
Sure.
And I know what they were doing was so corrupt. And so I had 2,896 days in prison to think through these things. And I would sometimes late at night on my bunk in that 6-foot by 8-foot prison cell that I lived in for quite some time, late at night, the demons would come in, you know, and you know, despair might start creeping in. So would fear. And I would think about my little girls, and that I let pride get in the way of that, because now their dad could have been home maybe in a year or 18 months.
Right.
And look what I've done. Now they don't have me for all those years. But I reconciled my mind that sometimes there are moments where there's something that's just higher, and you just have to be willing to sacrifice. And as bad as it is for the people that you love, you have to sacrifice. And in my own mind, I felt like by me going through all of this as I was, and now enduring all those years in prison alone by myself, with them alone without me, that at least they'll have always, my two little girls, the ability to say, my daddy didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's meaningful.
Absolutely.
So no regrets.
Okay. Your second trial, June 27th in 2011, you were found guilty on 17 counts, not guilty on 1, and deadlocked on the remaining 2. So then you go in on December 7th and you are sentenced. What were your feelings going into sentencing day?
Well,
What were you up for, by the way? What was the most you could get to be sentenced?
At that point, it was, a life sentence. I was out jogging one day after the convictions and before the sentencing hearing, and I consider myself pretty fit as governors go. And it was about a 7-mile run, and it was the usual run I did. In fact, I did it this morning, not far from where we are right now.
Wow.
But in any event, I'm halfway through the run, and back then they had newspapers, right? And they had those newspaper boxes. And the Chicago Sun-Times, which is the second largest paper in Illinois and second in Chicago, but has a big readership back then, they had these boxes. And as I'm running past this intersection, I see the newspaper box out of the corner of my eye, and I say, was that me? And I came back, and I'm running in place. It was me. It was a colored photo of me on the whole front page, and the headline bold across the paper was 30 years to life, is what the prosecutors were asking for. They had filed their paperwork asking for 30 years to life.
How did that feel?
I never took a penny, right? And I did good works, and I had a good driving record. I didn't have a single ticket. Of course, I wasn't driving. I had the police driving me, security detail, but still, no tickets and no criminal record. Now, 30 years to life. Well, how did it make me feel? I finished that run faster than I ordinarily did. It just gave me a lot of energy to run. I almost felt like keep running north and don't turn the other way.
Right.
But so by the day that we went to the sentencing, that was what they were still on record asking for. During the process, the judge had determined that I was in the range of 15 years to 30. So the life thing was taken away. The whole thing was just in so many ways, such a corrupt joke, the system. And they play these games with these statutory guidelines that the Congress passed, and I might have been guilty of having voted for some of that myself without even realizing it. And frankly, would have been trusting of the system, and I would have probably knowingly voted for those things. But they put these guidelines in place where it's a one-size-fits-all approach, and they don't take into account the individual case, the nature of the facts, the family circumstances, the person's record, and all those other things. They're sort of locked in. And anyway, if you ask me how I was feeling going into court, I have a tendency to almost always see the glass as half full and half empty. And I kept saying that this judge is a political guy. He was appointed by President Reagan. He was a big Republican honcho in the 80s in Illinois. He was the director of the Illinois State Police. He was the chief of staff for an attorney general who was actually corrupt and took money. This guy knows politics, and he knows this is all bullshit. And he had to go out of his way to help the cops so they don't get embarrassed. Because I saw this when I was a criminal defense lawyer. Sometimes the cops would play games with some of the stuff they did to some of those guys, and the judge would protect them at trial, but then he would generally go easy on the guy because he screwed him at trial. I felt like that was going to happen. And Patty, God bless her, she didn't think so. And then I would say to her, I think he likes me. And
you could laugh at that now.
Yeah, I don't think he does. And so once he said it was like 190 months or 181 months, I turned to one of my lawyers and said, how long is that? And she said 14 years. She knew it right away. Yeah. My first thought was, Patty was right. He doesn't like me. So, it was a difficult thing, but, it was interesting because like you say, I was always out there, fighting. And now I just totally got my ass kicked, right?
Right.
And one of my lawyers, well-meaning, had suggested afterwards, I arranged it with the marshals, the U.S. Marshals. They can get you out a side door, go through the basement, and you can drive out of here and avoid the media. Now, I've been talking to the media every step of the way, right? Now that I get my ass kicked, the last thing I'm doing is to be some chicken shit guy that walks out some back door. So, no. I said, no, I'm talking to him. So now we're wargaming in this holding room. What do you say? Right? Now Patty's with me and she's cheered up, but she's stoic and she's so strong. And she really is. She's really remarkable, my wife. But so he says, we're thinking there's a group of lawyers and he's a real good guy, this my lawyer Sheldon Sorosky, but there's a silliness to him. And for whatever reason, he thought that I might want to borrow from what Richard Nixon had said at what was considered at the time his last press conference in 1962, after he'd run for governor of California and got his ass kicked. He got beat bad. And Nixon was angry at the way the press treated him, and he gave what was called his last press conference where he said, you won't have Nixon to kick around anymore. Nixon would come back 6 years later and be president, one of the great political comebacks in American history, but at that time, Nixon was politically dead. So my lawyer suggested, why don't you do that? You won't have, Blagojevich kick around anymore. And I said, I'm not quoting Nixon, okay, or making light of this, okay? So what I ended up doing was I just went down there and I quoted a couple of lines from my favorite poem called If by Rudyard Kipling. And I just said, there's a line in there, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. So I said that, and I said there was nothing more really for us to say other than that we needed to get home, Patty and I, and be with our daughters and explain to them what happened, what this means, and where we're going from here as a family. And that's pretty much it. But I certainly, met the media. I didn't run from them, and I never will really.